Okay, so we're finishing Plague Wing now, and this is actually a video not about Plague Wing, but here's a little bait, something interesting that happens. And while we're talking about speedruns, this is going to stay relevant. So, luckily you can leave Plague Wing, whatever, fuck Plague Wing things, but you can leave Plague Wing easily. You get out of there. Okay, so, notice, I know this is kind of annoying because of the fucking, whatever, this title is in the way, but it doesn't matter. These debuffs are up. One of these debuffs from Lotheb is the one that prevents you from healing more than once a minute. So in a speedrun context, that's a little annoying because you'd like to heal, but you can't, in fact. So very specifically, what we do when we can't really heal and the raid is this low, people should really be using their bandages. They should be taking care of themselves essentially as best they can. But we actually do a little bait. So technically, this video is about Spiderwing. However, if you happen to be leaving Plague Wing with a debuff up and you're trying to go fast, it's worth considering that you can do packs at the beginning of Military Wing, like we're about to do, with a precast timer, and by adhering really strictly, maybe more strictly than normal, which this actually still is, despite the fact that it didn't look that strict, to the precast timers, you can take almost no damage. And even though the healers can only heal once every minute, they actually can slowly catch up with the raid while they are not able to heal. So if you watch the raid, right, tank group 1 groups, melee groups don't really take any damage through this slowly. We're maybe working the warlocks up who life tapped super hard to go hard. This debuff right now, it's fading, right? You can see it's got under a minute left. So we precasted a few packs. We ran back over to Spiderwing because we wanted to be able to heal during Spiderwing. So you don't want to stop. You don't want to have to wait for your debuff to fade unless you're just trying to AFK or whatever, right? But you do need to heal during Spiderwing. Has to be done. So while you're taking that off, here we are. It's still not ticked off yet. We still have a couple seconds left, but we're just going to assume that we're going to make it through. So first thing, a little AoE pack, nothing exciting. We were nice and disciplined here. We sort of started, but then we stopped. No big boom here. We got both packs with one AoE taunt. Boom, we blasted the shit out of them. Massive. Cool. No problems there. And we move on. Nothing exciting. Next pack. These we try not to move. We precast Skull or can't if you really don't get into good range, but make sure that the little guys are facing out. They do some sort of a cleave. You don't want to be cleaving your tanks. There's a lot of them. So your tanks should be like facing around a circle essentially. The mobs are in the center, the tanks are facing out, none of them are facing each other. Or you could just ignore this in Classic. I'm sure you could just make 2 stacks of 2, 3 stacks of 2, whatever it takes, You're cleansing because this is the same debuff that goes out on Neff. Or not cleansing, you're decursing. You should not use a moist talent here even if you have them for your speedruns because that's a giant waste. This is a short debuff. You need to make sure that you prioritize decursing only the tanks so that the tanks can be healed. You can see in this case I probably over decursed, to be honest. Fucking with my decurse prio a little bit, probably because of that, right? Like I don't need to be decursing anybody in group 4, 5, 6, more than likely it would be best if you just actually targeted somebody who was low HP and then decursed them, but that's what the druid should be doing. That's the druid's number one focus, is to make sure that the number one prio decurse is always going out, because I'm really just hybrid focused on doing damage here. Here we go into a Nubricon, which again, like many of these classic mobs, should just be completely disrespected. We go in, yeah, there's ads, whatever, stack and cleave. There's 3 of them, so that's cool. He's going to do his knock-up thing. Really all that means is you want to have the same immunity or resilience to fall damage as you did before with Noggin Foggers or being a mage or having slow fall, levitate, whatever. And also spreading out. This line, you see that line, right? Somebody is going to get randomly targeted to get knocked up, and it's actually like a hunter's attack. So here actually you can see, let's go back a second. So here we are pumping from distance, right? Anybody probably, I imagine this person cannot because they're able to be web wrapped. This person could be, but unclear if they're near the line. This radius, outside of this, you're able to be targeted by that puncture. So when you see this many people who are able to be targeted in such a dense area, and it's a narrow thing, the odds of them being targeted are just higher, right? Like, let's say there's 20 people here. I'm 1 in 20. There's 2 of us, so we have maybe a 10% chance of being targeted, knocked into the air, and losing that DPS, losing that uptime. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So there's 10 people here. Of the 20, there's a 50% chance that you're going to get some sort of knock up in this area. This is just bad, right? These mages, I think, should have blinked. It should be Scorch, Blink, Fireball. I don't think this is necessarily Scorch, tank your position, Pyroblast, because you don't gain anything for the Pyro. The healers should be the ones who are allowed to camp their spot. The DPSers should have to spread a little bit. But whatever, that's 2 min-max. On the other hand, just spread out as best you can, as best as is convenient, and it'll work out. Locust Swarm, yet another thing. What is this, like an 80-second, 90-second timer? Who gives a shit? You'll never see it. You're fucking up completely if you see this timer. Debuff your mob. Make sure it's got improved exposed armor in Classic, whatever. Cleave off of these little guys. So this puncture goes out, and I realize, fuck this. I'm moving in. Hit a little mind quickening gem, right? Whatever. Come into the center, and just you can tank the slight damage. So you see the web I resisted here. We're being webbed for some damage and the root if we are in melee range. If you needed to move, you would want a freedom from a paladin, but why move? No need. Just max threat, just max damage. I'm tanking a little bit of pushback as a caster by standing in here, but it really doesn't matter. It ends up being better because I don't want to fly through the air. I just don't feel like it. And that worked out for me pretty well. If I needed to, I could have blinked, though, if I had actually ended up being knocked. So now we move into a pretty interesting pull, a nice big double pull, the Farlina pull. Maybe we'll have to deal with some more trash in the meanwhile. Oh yeah, no, we're not Farlina pulling yet. We will though. So you can see the paladin saying that he bubbled, which is interesting because that's part of, he needs his bubble for the Farlina double pull. He was definitely the one plan to do it. So this may or may not have actually ended up changing our flow. I'm not sure. There's 2 more of these packs. You probably can't wait for both of them to do one AoE taunt because they're just a bit desynchronized. Just AoE them. Don't die. Easy. Same thing when you, as before with gray spiders, which is what we're going to run into next. You will be able to do the skip on private or on classic. I'm 100% sure. This is a little sloppy. We need to kill the Crypt Reaver, the 1 marked skull, single target. Should be pretty easy. That's Melee's job. Like before with the gray ones, they should be split up and facing different directions. If you look at the raid frames, anytime somebody's actually getting chunked, it's because there's multiple spiders looking in the same direction for their cleave type web effect ability. I don't think it roots anybody, it just does damage. So you can easily tank 1, no problem, ever. And I'm sure you can tank 2 if healers are willing to push a bunch of heals out into you. When you're speedrunning properly, there's really no reason to be tanking 3. So what we're doing is just trying our best to making sure that we're not taking unnecessary damage so that we can pump and not be pumped, right? Here we see first spiders, first big screen, green spiders and some shitty little spiders with them, which we ignore. We just can blast the little spiders down nearby, but we don't because the big green spiders are much more important. They put out a poison, which you can see on the raid frames and on my own debuffs. If they poison anybody, most of the people in the raid are doing a good job of poison cleansing themselves instantly because we are scared shitless of this poison debuff. It is one of the worst debuffs in the dungeon, if not definitely the worst. I don't know why I canceled that fireball. So you can see that's actually, it happened really fast, but let's move back a bit. So cancel the fireball for whatever reason, should have let it go. Boom. So now I have 2 poison debuffs. I got a debuff from both of those spiders because they do a charge cone of poison. FPS gone shit, unlucky. The entire raid, totally poisoned. The damage that it would have ticked for, I believe, is 2k each. So in a second or 2, I was getting 4k damage. I would have survived because I have 7k HP at this point, but immediately poison cleanse, right? And you can see that's the amount of time it took for me to poison cleanse, and there was most of the raid 1 second ago or so was poisoned. We'll watch it again. Look at the raid frames this time. Bam. All these people poisoned. Give it another beat. They all cleanse themselves. A lot of them do. Some of them are not necessarily cleansing themselves quickly, a little slower, but within 1 GCD, this is the amount of people who are cleansed. So, and you can see this damage that was done. This is not melee damage. These, this rogue, this mage, this paladin, these are not taking melee damage. That's the damage that the cleanse does, that the poison does. So, these are just like me. These are 8k, 7k HP players taking huge ticks of poison. So you drop whatever the fuck you are doing, exactly like I just did there, and you EPR. No questions asked. Otherwise, you're dead, and you're kind of an asshole for it. And we move on. We don't rip aggro. boom, boom, boom. So, I hear that we won't be able to do this Faralina pull here on Classic because these mobs are immune to Arcane Bomb, which is sort of a problem. There can be a workaround using mortars. I don't know if that's something that anybody is willing to try, but you'll see from the setup, basically what you would do is you would replace our final approach with a much, much, much further throw of mortars after the same setup, and hopefully it would work. I'm not sure if anybody's going to try it on week 1. I would imagine no. But here we go. So Paladins of Viz, they're going 2 different directions. As soon as their Invis pot wears out, they pop a bubble. All the mobs go after them. There they are. They meet each other. They've got every pack. Warrior takes a bop. He approaches. He gets no aggro because he takes a bop. We throw Arcane Bombs. He puts an AoE taunt out. Everybody yeets in. And we just go as hard as we possibly can. I go to 0 frames, but I do 46k damage with my Blast Wave Sapper. So, everything's cool. They're all done. That's awesome, right? That's a huge time save. If we're able to pull that out, that'd be great. I'm sure if you can get in close enough to Sapper and hit that 46k Sapper, it'll be good enough. But if without the Arcane Bombs, they have a big knockback. So let's move back for a second, take a look at the room before we did all that. And talk about what the fuck you might have to do if you need to full clear. So if you need to full clear, these mobs kind of suck. You're going to have to precast again just because you want to get some of them gone. They have an Arcane Explosion that's combined with a knockback, and they have quite a bit of a punch. So the biggest issue is going to be them knocking you back into other packs. You want to be careful, especially with these first 2 packs, that you really need to pull them back to where we are and maybe even a touch further back if you're doing these packs normally. So we would probably mark this guy with a skull, this guy be an X, this guy be whatever, etc., etc. The deeper marks, the ones that are not going to be killed, are going to have counterspell assignments out there. So skull and X probably wouldn't. They're expected to die, but of these remaining, there would be counterspell assignments for at least 3 of them. One of the mob types, not both. So we precast skull, it probably dies. A few people are assigned to precast X, it dies quickly after. Melee open on X, they know it dies. We counterspell, they all walk back, right? Then we do the same thing over here. We move over there, we do the same thing. We move over there, we do the same thing. We move over there, we do the same thing. There you go. Very tedious, which is why this pull is insane. If you can actually get it to work once again. So, who knows? Let's move on. Now, moving in fast, we precast the shit out of the one we want. You see everything you need to know from these marks right here. We want Skull and X dead. We want these other marks to be controlled for the priests to use as mind control tools, and then Diamond comes right after. So we precast Skull, it literally falls over with the precast. X dies shortly after. Diamond we go like into on immediately after that. We'll take a look at her enrage timer. I believe it is a 60-second enrage, which to me means there's going to be exactly 1 mind control that's actually needed. Yeah, fairly engaged, 60 seconds to enrage. So we have 55 seconds before she even enrages the first time. There's 4 mobs. We don't need 4 mobs. You need 1 mob per enrage, right? We're going to kill her in maybe even before the first enrage. I mean, let's find out. Both ads are dead already. We're working on Skull, and we have 38 seconds. At the time, I actually never take a look at this timer at all because I'm really just not focused on planning whether or not we're going to be missing these windows. It's mostly just dealing with them as they come. This damage comes out. It's kind of scary, but just don't tank Rain of Fire while you're getting ticked down by poisoned. And like use an EPR or use a health pot, whatever the fuck you need to do. You can pre-pop fire potions here. Everything's fine. You killed it. There's 14 seconds to this enrage. We didn't need even 1 of the mind control mobs. Was not even remotely necessary. None of them in the slightest. So that's probably a pretty fast kill. Maybe some of the first classic kills are going to need 1 mind control tool, but it seems really unlikely that we're going to need 2. I would not expect to see double enraged Faralina kills. So you know that 3 of those mobs are just useless. You're never going to have a priest touch them. You're just going to have a warrior just taunting them, smacking them. Everybody else ignores the shit out of them. Only 1 of them is needed. Here we do a skip. We've got another pack like we've seen already before. I don't know if you can do this skip on Classic, but the 2 packs are identical, so you would just do them the same way. You kill Skull, make sure that the little dudes are facing out. You decurse if you're feeling scared. You know, I look at the tank frames here and I'm like, these are kind of fine. Doesn't seem like I really need to decurse. And I probably shouldn't at all when they're this stable. Powered shield perks wonders, right? Move on. See some slime, but don't need to fuck with it. Here you could run around. You could go left, right, center, whatever. There's some ghouls. These are just like the ghouls we've seen before at the beginning of Plague Wing, where at the end of their time they are enraged and they turn big and scary and they need to be stunned. You see a kidney go out on X. It's pretty early, but I bet it was no, he was expecting it to be doing a little more damage. And actually, look, there it is. Okay, actually, here you go. Great to run through. Great to run through. So here's a Skull, and let's take a look at the banana bars. Skulls, we know Skull needs to get stunned when it's about to die so that it doesn't flurry and kill everybody, right? So here, Skull dies. I assume I pulled my target off before it got CC'd because it dies, right? No problem. Pumping on X. Pumping, 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 pumping. There's a kidney shot. The kidney shot goes out really early. It's really high HP. We don't get further sunders than 2, so the damage here is actually pretty bad. There's no scorches. I'm fireballing, and I feel like in this raids, if I'm not scorching, everybody's fireballing. So, at least on trash. The kidney shot fades here. There's no stun on this mob. Look at the raid frames, right? As this happens, as X is dying fast, X is now red, Moon is dying fast, Moon does not have CC, Moon doesn't have CC, Moon doesn't have CC, okay, Moon still no CC, they're disarmed, but here we take a look at the raid frames, tank deaths, right? These are the tanks getting rocked by the flurry from those mobs, right? And then we start these spirits pulling these gargoyle pulls, which are a different beast. There's a lot of AoE coming in here, but we can just get through this with our huge amount of damage. A little major rejuve potion. It gets really, really sketchy, actually. We tanked it hard. We pulled into percent food. Only 1 death is actually kind of good, considering how scary that pull will be if you were to do that in Prague. But the fundamental issue had nothing to do with how many mobs we pulled, in the slightest. It was a mishandling of the basic mechanic of the ghouls, just the same way it was before. You have to kill them during a CC. I think the root cause there was pretty shit sundering. 2 sunder X, it's not going to be bursted very fast. It's dying slowly. And what should have been, probably a 4-second kidney shot didn't turn into a kill because nobody followed up with the 5 sunders, and then it just didn't die quickly. It's that microsecond kill that costs a tank death, which is sad. More poisons, more of the dudes. You can kind of spread out here if you wanted to, because they're going to do a charge, but it charged the melee anyway, as you can see from raid frames. They cleanse themselves. Paladins and druids help as best they can. Another gargoyle pack, exactly the same. At this point, if you see a second, a trash mob that was the same as it was before, is the same mob type in every way, there's no change. Nothing is different. Just handle it the fucking same. In this wing, it's just a little bit more interesting in terms of variability, right? You've got a gargoyle mixed with a spider, mixed with, a humanoid doing whatever. So, interesting, another death, real quick. He's got, right now, full HP. This is Hattie in Group 3. He's got 3 debuffs, just like everybody in the raid from the gargoyles, which is ticking me for 393, so that's probably ticking everybody for 393. He gets charged. I guess you can't see on my frame his debuffs because he's got another one, right? So he gets charged by these poison mobs. He gets charged and gets poison, and just 1, 2 ticks right there, dead, right? The second tick just kills him. The first tick, he survives. Second tick, he's dead. Falls over. Of course, he's taking the 393 damage every few seconds from the gargoyle aura, but it's the 2 point whatever K ticks per poison that really ends up killing you. By the way, this pack of deaths, this cluster of deaths that you see happening during Spiderwing is every bit part of the reason why people don't tend to start Spiderwing and instead want to start A-Bomb Wing, because you're sort of expecting that there is a lot of death taxing happening in Spiderwing, and you want to avoid giving up those buffs if you can throw them into Patchwork instead. So here we do a big fat skip. I think part of that skip is LOS. There's a good bit of play around slime, where some people are blinking, but it's an oblique blink. So if you can't put some thought into it, I wouldn't try it. You can just tank the slime damage. I mean, at the end of the day, the whole raid is going to have to anyway. So you have to spend the time to recover from that. So it's really not so bad, right? This is also what I mentioned in the previous videos about if you get an engagement while you're in slime. If you are firmly in slime, so where's Ramiri right now? Let's take a look. Yeah, so Ramiri, you can see right here, you might not be able to tell, but he's actually in the slime for sure, because we know this. There's no way he would be full HP, full mana if he were already outside, right? That does not make sense. Could be full HP maybe if he had first aid up, but I don't think that's what happened, right? He's actually still in the slime. So if we got an ass pull and we got these mobs coming in, we've definitely seen already from the packs in this, there's a lot of AoE coming out. It's not the end of the world if we get that ass pull. We've done it many times. We're going to do a pack up in a second. He has to stick to the fucking slime until he knows that it is safe. There's no AoE damage coming out. It's just like accepting a combat res or a rank 1 fucking pally res somewhere in a battlefield, right? Like, there's damage coming out. You have to know that your environment is safe. I'll move on. We recover from slime. We talk about dragons. We talk about chickens. Talk about timers. We're catching up a little bit. We're doing new buffs. This is an opportunity for Melee to do food buffs. There's a counterspell here we run through. If you do get the mobs that we ran through, by the way, the packs that we've been skipping, they're really not that bad. It's some undead dogs and some humanoids. You can see them off in the corner. Actually, there's an undead dog right there. The undead dog knocks back. You want to make sure that the tank just brings them to the wall and themselves are only being knocked back against the wall, and that's about it. There's not anything too scary about those packs. We move on. Here's the last boss in the wing. It's Max Nut. One thing to keep in mind is this is not an undead boss, just like Farolina wasn't, but a Nubricon was. So you need to make sure that you're wearing gear that does not include your Strat Undead trinket, because that doesn't do anything. So here we actually get the sickest, our first sick, I should say, kill speed milestone here, where we get to kill before web wrap. That won't really be common in Classic, I don't think, especially not week 1. It's not going to happen because you need buffs at this point. We definitely still have all our buffs despite the few people who died, so we're pumping super duper hard. We roll a big ignite. It's 5.2k. The cocoons go out. The warlocks turn. They do their jobs. The hunters turn. They do their jobs. The mages don't leave the boss. The mages are still pumping their ignite because the boss has to die. Obviously, you can see the boss is getting slammed on. There's a web spray coming out in 5 seconds, but we all pop Death Wish. Everybody pop their cooldowns, and we fuck the boss up before web spray comes out. That's sick, but already been discussed that we're definitely ahead in terms of damage than where we're going to be, at least slightly. So, making those kill speeds right, I don't think it's very Classic-like that you will be at, 2% HP with 3 seconds left till web spray. Most likely Classic kills will be somewhere around 15%, maybe 20% at this stage, right, when web spray is coming out, which is no big deal. Some things to think about how we deal with that. Myosin can shield wall. We probably have a lay on hands on him out already. Actually, you can see in the chat logs, lay on hands on Myosin. He does this fight with a lay on hands armor debuff up. He would have been full hotted. He would have had a powered shield. For a prog kill, we would have used a bag of marbles on Maxna, or you can use this Strat Undead thing to give Maxna a reduced chance to hit. He's also definitely in a shield. He's got improved shield block. It's probably up. You're really turtly. You could last stand. If you wanted to, you could shield wall. I don't think we would ever shield wall here on a speed run, and it's mostly because those other tools are sufficient, right? With the stone shield, with the lay on hands, everything else, the shield, whatever, it shouldn't be a problem. You should just survive. So, you think again in Classic terms, you'll come out of that web wrap, it'll be 15% HP. Maybe cocoons will come out again shortly after, but you'll probably kill before the cocoons go out. Just be mindful that you do want to kill the cocoons quickly if they come out near the end of the boss. Because there can be some buggy behavior with the boss dying and the cocoon not despawning or it taking a long period of time and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and that's it. That's the end of that wing.